the hardest thing to do is remember the lessons that you learned, right? Because you start to, oh, maybe we do try this, and you're bringing in a new leadership team, and they don't have that shared history with you in remembering, hey, that didn't work the first time. Let's kind of revisit why.
Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Mike Rauter, and today we have Michele Henry joining us on the show. Michele is the founder and CEO of Face Foundrié. And if you're not familiar with Face Foundrié, it's a rapidly growing chain of facial bars that are revolutionizing the skincare industry. And with her entrepreneurial spirit and business acumen, Michele has taken Face Foundrié from a single location to a nationwide franchise. And today we're going to be diving into her journey, the challenges that she's faced, the lessons that she's learned along the way. And plus, we're going to explore how her business intersects with the real estate space as well. So with that, Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Yes, most definitely. Excited to have you on. So first off, if you want to share or start off by bringing us back to the start, how did you get the entrepreneurial bug? And tell us about the start of your journey.
All right, let's go way back. I actually worked for my parents' business. So I started at 13. We built in-ground pools. And my dad had a lot of rental homes. And so in the winter months, we would fix up those rental homes. So tying it back to the real estate component of this podcast, learned at a very young age what it takes to kind of go in and flip a home. On the flip side, during the summer months, what it takes to actually push a business along, especially one as fickle as a seasonal business like pool building in Minnesota. So I learned a lot from them, and it didn't just stop. We would work all day, but those conversations never stopped. They were always at the dinner table. We had a lot of exposure, and I felt like at a very young age, I understood more of the strategy behind business, and I fell in love with it. And from there, I just knew I wanted to do something and build my own business in some capacity.
That's amazing. And if I remember right, when you jumped into the business realm and starting your own business, you started a boutique. So it wasn't Face Foundry first, it was another business. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Even before my boutique, I had a screen printing business. So that was one I didn't get into a ton because it was a little bit of a blip on the radar, but I was an apparel design major. So I love apparel, and things just fell into place, and we started a women's clothing chain. And this was back in 2010. So you think about the real estate market, 2009, 2010, we were getting some amazing locations. And I remember kind of looking back at the highs and lows, and we opened our first location for Primp at Selbydale in St. Paul. And at that moment in time, I think back to what the rent was, and I would kill for that rent today.
I love it. And found some amazing locations, obviously a little bit different market then than today, as far as the retail space goes. But how did you pick those locations? How did you know that they were amazing locations, Michele?
So the Selbydale location, what was interesting is what we went off of was traffic count. And I remember specifically there were 23,000 cars a day that went by that location. Now, at the time, I didn't know how important maybe foot traffic would be to factor into that equation. And we were between two different sites. We actually were heartbroken. We lost out on a site at Snelling and Selby. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, maybe we can't execute this concept. Well, Selbydale was kind of our second location. And looking back, it was just this perfect storm. It was the most amazing spot for us to be, especially from a visibility standpoint. And I truly don't think that we would have gotten as far in our business journey without that location being our first, because it was so prominent. Everybody knew it, whether you were familiar with Selbydale 20 years ago or at that moment, but it was very, very busy and up and coming in that area.
Got it. I appreciate you sharing that. And, I heard your story a couple of months ago or so, and you had mentioned that, that first opening day was a huge success. And I'm sure a portion of that had to do with, how you set up the business, your business plan, what you guys were selling. A portion of it was probably location. Tell us more about that. Like, how did you make that first day and, day after day a success at that business?
Yes, September 16th, 2010. I will never forget that day. So we built out that whole store ourselves, and we were in there, we were painting, we were putting up walls for fitting rooms. We truly were start to finish creating it from scratch. And we didn't leave any money in the budget for marketing. We had our vinyl signs up. It was a corner unit. It still is there. And I truly attribute a lot of the visibility being, just vinyl signs on both sides of the street. So we had our paper over the windows, and it was opening day. We decided, all right, let's take it down, and took off the paper. And around the corner was a line of women waiting to get in. And when I say it was bananas, I'm not kidding. I'm shocked we didn't have the fire marshal through. It was jam packed. People were just like skipping, trying on clothes. They were going straight to the register. They were buying stuff. We sold out of every single piece of clothing in the store within a 4-hour time frame. And again, budgeting, maybe, there's a lot to learn, right, from your past. And budgeting, we didn't leave any money in the budget for marketing or for Wi-Fi. So we went next door to the Muddy Pig, which is no longer there, but it was a bar that did have Wi-Fi. And we ended up ordering all of our clothing for the next day and having to overnight it.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. You jumped over to the side business to utilize their Wi-Fi. And I mean, that just shows the relentless pursuit, being relentless, like even if you don't have a budget for Wi-Fi or for marketing, just making it happen. So that's incredible. How, I'm curious, taking a step back, setting up the business, from, the original concept to when you opened the doors on that first boutique, how long of a time frame was that, Michele?
We started to formulate this idea in June. We really got serious in July. We probably had 30 days to build it out. It was very, very fast. It was very fast. And looking back, I'm really happy that we went at such a quick speed because,
Yep.
to your point, right, we're in this like relentless pursuit. There was nothing we couldn't figure out. And I feel like it was that perfect intersection of just like confidence and ignorance, right? Where you're 24 years old, what do you have to lose? And we were just going full force.
That's awesome. I love it. And that's sometimes how you have to jump into it. So kudos for you for taking action and just jumping in. I would love to talk a little bit more about Face Foundrié, Michele. Very successful there. My wife raves about the business. What inspired you to start Face Foundrié? And tell us a little bit more about the company as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you to your wife for being a fan. We greatly appreciate that. So back in 2017, I had just had my third child. I have 4 kids, but I had my third child, and I was still fully active in Primp. We had at the time 9 retail locations. Every location had funded the next one. So we were on this, good growth trajectory, and it was all corporately owned stores. In 2015, we really started to look at what would this concept be if it were a franchise model. We kind of got down a path, but there ended up being quite a few SKUs and a little bit more complexities than we'd want. So we decided, nope, we'll just roll it out corporately. So fast forward 2017, I had just had my third child, and I was struggling super bad with hormonal acne. I was feeling that kind of lack of confidence in my own skin. And as I was trying to get a hold of it, I would go to certain med spas and I would try to get treatments and understand what was going on. But the accessibility and the pricing just were not attainable. And I sat on this idea of why isn't there a better way in the skincare industry? Why isn't there a place where you can walk in? You can get these fairly quick facials. You can still be results driven and have that beautiful aesthetic, but not have that really heavy price point. So I sat on this for a year. Like I was like, nope, someone else will do it. Waited. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had my business plan. I approached the Galleria. I had this like vision of this is where we're going to launch. This is our flagship. So December 14th, 2018, 10:30 a.m., I signed over my rights, my ownership, and my shares for Primp. And at 10:35, 5 whole minutes later, I went down and I signed the lease for what would become the first Face Foundry. And it was such a wild ride. And from there, we truly just kept growing and expanding. And I knew back from when I had these Primp days where I really wanted to franchise that model. I love that idea of franchising and bringing people in that get excited and want more of a blueprint for business. And so day one, we were documenting what was working, what wasn't with Face Foundry, and how we could eventually roll it out as a franchise model.
Got it. And fast forward to today, it's a franchise. How many locations do you guys have?
We have 60 open. We'll have about 80 by the end of the year. We started franchising in, well, what was going to be 2020, but we had COVID. So we had to wait a bit and ended up launching our first franchise store in August of 2021. So we've been moving quick, and we've got some amazing franchisees that have entered into our system that have really helped us create this best in class franchise model. And I attribute their contributions to our success and our growth.
That makes sense. And looking back on our careers and everything that we've been involved with, we did a restaurant franchise model a few years back, just one store, and went through some pretty big issues with leadership and other issues. How do you guys make sure that you're providing the proper leadership and giving the proper support to those franchisees?
Yeah, it's so important, right? Especially early on, because we're trying to grow quickly, but you also want to make sure that there's a level of support. A lot of our staff members have been with us almost since day one. And so they've seen a lot of the changes that we've had to make, and they've acclimated and they've grown with us, which is really important, because the hardest thing to do is remember the lessons that you learned, right? Because you start to, oh, maybe we do try this, and you're bringing in a new leadership team, and they don't have that shared history with you in remembering, hey, that didn't work the first time. Let's kind of revisit why. So we've also got some amazing other talent that has joined us recently. Minnesota is a hub for really strong franchisors, and I think sometimes that gets overlooked. But you look at the powerhouse that is Self-Esteem Brands and Anytime Fitness, Caribou, you've got Dairy Queen, you've got Great Clips. So there's some really strong talent here that we've been able to recruit and lean on. And I think that's just enhanced our team in general. And it's kind of that perfect balance of people that have been with us for a long time and our veterans, and bringing in new staff with some new ideas that can kind of be that beautiful mix.
That makes sense. No, it certainly does. And I've heard too that you guys have some incredible training, for new team members that are coming on board at Face Foundry, and for current. Anything that you can share there on how you train?
So I would attribute that to that catalyst started March 14th, 2020, when we were forced to close down and mandated by the state to close down for COVID. And here we were, it was in hindsight, just this beautiful opportunity to focus on just online training platforms. So from a baseline, we created everything that could be online, how we would teach, how we would train from afar. And that's really where this started. And so now we have these training courses where we can track progress. We can make sure that before they even step foot into our operations training, everything has been accounted for. So I attribute that to the silver lining that was COVID, because we would have never had 3 months to just devote to operations training and creating it online.
I love that. And I love how, when you're in that time frame, it seems like a pitfall whereas it can be the biggest benefit of all, taking a step back and actually having some time to set aside for the training or whatever else you're working on, systems and processes for your business. So appreciate you sharing that. I'd like to talk a little bit about pivots in business. When you're in a business or you're running a company, regardless of what size, in my opinion, it's pivotal to make those pivots, as you're building out your business or as you're scaling. And you had shared a story about a juice bar, when you first started Face Foundry. had a juice bar and how you quickly pivoted. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think it's a really interesting story.
Yeah. So, as you probably remember, day one, we started with juice shots because I wanted this wellness approach. It's super important. What you put in your body also impacts your skin just as much as those monthly facials. So we had this beautiful juice bar, and the layout was that it would kind of face where people were getting their services, and then they could hang out afterwards and enjoy some juice. What we quickly realized is that nobody wanted to hang out after their facials. They really wanted the convenience of getting in and out. It was kind of an awkward setup with checking people out and facing others while they were getting their services. And ultimately, the shelf life of fresh juice is very, very short, and the margins aren't always the greatest if it's not your core focus. So, a few days in, we ended up having to close down. We pivoted the cash wrap, we added more beds, and we said, we are a focused facial bar. That is our core competency. Let's stick with it and run with it. So I think it's important. You have to beta test stuff, right? You have to drive innovation. You have to be willing to try new things. And our kind of beta test was this juice bar. It did not work. No shame. I'll admit it all day long, but you have to be able to pivot and pivot quickly. And that's something that, again, I've continued to try to adopt that mentality and encourage our team to adopt that. Like, let's try it and we'll do a blameless autopsy afterwards and we'll see if it worked or not.
Yep, I absolutely love that. And just tracking as you make those adjustments and you try new things, just make sure to track them very closely. And like you did, pivot quickly if you need to. It can make a world of a difference, in the profit margins and just customer experience and whatnot. Looking back, Michele, anything that you would have done differently, whether it be with Primp or, your printing business or Face Foundry, any challenges or anything that you would have done differently at all?
I mean, there's always challenges, right? Like if you can't look back and say, oh, I kind of misstepped there, then I don't know, I question that leadership. I've got a lot running through my brain. I think with Primp, I maybe gave up on franchising a little too soon. I think that now, knowing what I know about franchising and how rewarding it is and how many amazing franchisees we have in Face Foundry, I think we could have pursued that path. I have learned so much. And I think that there's not a regret, but more of a, hopefully there's a nugget of wisdom I can share. Looking back, finding the right accountants and the right legal, especially if you're pursuing franchising, I think is so important. And it took us a little while to find kind of that finance component. We've got a great legal team, but I do think that's something, just being really mindful of the people that can do it better than you and how they enter into your system and what maybe guardrails you're going to put up. I think that would be something I would call out.
No, I 100% agree. And I think, about our multifamily business and, hiring A players and bringing on the right teams, like you said, legal, accounting, it is so critical. So do your due diligence on these team members. Make sure to put in a lot of time before you hire them. And if you need to fire them or move on to a different team, so be it. Jump ship. And I think that's one thing to take into mind is if you have a third party involved in your business, like a CPA firm, a legal firm, cost seg company, teams change. Their leadership might change, their people might change, they might be growing too quick. So just keep your eye on the ball because that can change and you may have to make a pivot, as you continue on.
I would say you should be, as an entrepreneur, right? It's always hard to gauge, like, are they doing enough? Especially if this is your first venture, right? Like, what is the bar? What is the standard that I'm setting? If you're new to this, I would say, are you learning from them? Like, that's my biggest takeaway is like, am I learning something from them every time I connect? And I think that's something, it's a very easy calculation to track.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love it. Is there anything specific that helps you get through challenges? Meditation, something personally, or even in the business, or people you rely on?
Yeah, definitely. I am a big fan of meditation. I have to also move my body every single day. And so I do this Pilates, reformer / treadmill workout in Wyzetta, Rev. I love it. It's kind of my ritual along with my meditation, and then I write down and I journal and I manifest every single day. And I think that's something you're, especially if you do it in the morning, you're setting the foundation for how your entire day goes. And so really being present and starting on that right foot, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love it. I love, moving your body every day. I think about every day, when I work out, we try to work out, my wife and I, and my kids sometimes too. We had our 12-year-old working out with us this morning, but just how that sets you up for a successful day. Like you feel energized, you feel great. And I love that journal as well. I mean, that allows you to focus on what you're wanting to build and, getting feedback and looking back on what you could have changed or what you could have, what you can work on to become better. So it's
And
incredible,
it,
Michelle.
thanks. It holds you accountable. I think that's my big thing, right? If I can look back and say, hey, wait a minute, I've been tracking this goal or saying I was going to do this for, a certain amount of time and I'm not hitting that goal, I'm really going to stop and pause and say, what are the barriers or what's going on here? So I think that there's an accountability component that's really important. And as leaders, you don't always have someone that is holding you accountable,
Mhm.
maybe to the level you would hold yourself accountable. So I love having that tool.
Well, let's shift gears a bit and talk about industry trends. So, what significant trends have you observed in the beauty and skincare industry over the last couple of years, and how are those affecting your business, and how are you pulling from that to, grow moving forward?
It's such a fun industry. Let me just start there. I think that it's so personal that's what I love about it is everybody's journey is different and you're seeing people really notice a difference, but ultimately it's a chance for people to have 40 minutes to themselves. And
Mhm.
so I think that overall there's a huge focus on the wellness industry. I feel very grateful that we're a part of that. I think that, yes, we do facials, we can help with skincare routines, we can recommend products. But ultimately, I think that what's really important is, I know I've put a lot of emphasis back on the COVID days. What we've found is people really needed that quiet time to shut out some of the wild and craziness from the outside world. And I'm sensing that again a little bit, where people just kind of need that moment to take for themselves. And I think that's what I love so much about this industry. That, and then of course the innovation. We
Yes.
launch a new menu every single August, and our whole team spends the entire year figuring out what's the white space, where are the opportunities in the industry, where is the innovation. And so I'm really excited. We're launching a new menu in August, and I think it's our best one yet. We are tapping into a market that we haven't touched on, and I can already tell that it's going to be huge. And we're seeing a lot of positive feedback in the locations that we're beta testing. But it's really, again, bringing that customization and that education to our clients and to our estheticians.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit more about the newest business that you recently opened the doors to. Super exciting, but would love to hear more.
Yes. So we had Primp and then Face Foundry. And then one business that I want to talk about is Savant. That's our aesthetics school. And so
Mhm.
we're seeing a lot of interest. We're actually on a wait list. So we've got a lot of people intrigued with becoming estheticians, which I think is really exciting. And when we went in and we surveyed the students, we asked them, what do you want to do next? What would be really exciting for you, or what industry would you like to work in? And a lot of them raised their hands and said, I really want to do something in laser. So we sat with that. We also surveyed some clients with Face Foundry, and we noticed that we were sending them to different med spas around to get med director led services like Botox or Sculptra or laser treatments. And we really didn't have that affiliation. And we sat on that for a while and decided, let's execute our own concept. Let's make it attainable in a price point, and let's do it at a level of that we would execute a Face Foundry. So Lasery just opened. It's a little serendipitous. They opened 6 years to the day in the original Face Foundry location in the
Wow,
Gettysburg.
that's incredible. I did not know that.
Yes. Yep.
That's amazing. Well, make sure to check that out, anyone that's listening. And, I would like to take it a step back here. So, a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs out there, people that are looking to build businesses, or become financially free. What advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those looking to start their first business?
Oh, a lot. I have a lot of advice, Mike. I'm not going to lie. And I'll just kind of throw it out there and it'll be a free flow. I would say, first and foremost, how bad do you want it? Are you going to lose sleep over it? Are you going to think about it when you're eating breakfast? Are you going to think about it in the shower or when you're driving to work? Like, if it is sitting there nagging at you and you can't stop thinking about it, then do something, right? If you think about it occasionally and you're not like, would I be okay if this thought kind of passed by and this opportunity passed by? If it is not like a yearning and you feel it in your soul, I would say don't pursue it. Like, you have to have that like passion and that drive and that motivation, because entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Like, there have been many nights I have been up worrying. There's been many times I have had to skip, family gatherings, or I wouldn't say as far as kids' birthdays, but like there's been a
Mhm.
lot of times where I've had to, choose my business over maybe being at home with my family for dinner. And so making sure that you're aware and that you're okay with pushing whatever this idea is forward. I think that's the big one. I already called out having really great help in the areas maybe you're not as strong in. So typically, again, accounting, legal, I think that's really important. Yeah. And I think overall, if you're thinking of taking on staff members or a partner,
Mhm.
make sure they're aligned in your values and your mission. I think that's so important. And it's easy to say, but really make sure that you are asking these questions and overall identifying what your values and what your mission is. Because if you don't know it, nobody else will. And it'll be really, really hard to get people to buy in if there's not a core why behind it. So that's probably a lot of advice, and hopefully people aren't overwhelmed by it. But I definitely think it's something to just be mindful of when you're entering into a business.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So, how bad do you want it? Make sure there's that yearning, identifying your vision, making sure you have a great team on your side, and then making sure that your actual team is aligned with your values. And that speaks to me. For us, our core values are everything. And if someone doesn't align with those core values, don't bring them into your organization, because it's going to cause friction. There's going to be issues. And one of the biggest, things too is the other team members on your team, it's going to cause issues with those team members as well if they don't align with your core values. So make sure to tune into that.
Yep, I
Um,
completely agree. And I think passion, there's no substitute for passion. So if you find passionate teammates you can bring on, I would rather hire a fast nickel than a slow dime. Can't remember who said that, but I always love that phrase.
I love it. No, I completely agree. Michelle, tell us a little bit about family. I know family is huge for you, super important. You had mentioned that your son has gotten into his own business, which is super exciting.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more.
I am so excited for summer to hit because my kids will be here helping in the warehouse and helping at HQ. And that is just so fun for me because I feel like it's the circle of life, right? I started in a family business. I can take a lot of what I've learned and what they see firsthand. And maybe there's something it sparks within them. And of course, no pressure if it doesn't, but I definitely see it in my son. He's my oldest, Bronson.
Mhm.
He's 13. And it was one of his like shifts here. He identified, wait a minute, mom, you ladies need a vending machine at the warehouse. And then he started to kind of go into, okay, we're going to research vending machines. What does the staff want? And then he started sending out surveys and putting it up on the fridge. Write down what you want in a vending machine. So he did his research. He saved up his money. It's been so cute to see. And I feel like it's really encouraging for him to try things that are new and a little bit riskier. And he definitely has that risk tolerance that I'm excited to see where he goes. He's only 13, but who knows? He'll probably have a few vending machines come by in his future.
That's super exciting. We had our daughters started a vending machine, candy machine gosh, it was back in 2018, 2019 or so. Did that for a couple of years, and counting the cash, and making sure that the books are in order, and talking, going in and pitching like the actual idea to the business owners. Like, some of those skills are just really, really important, and it might not be something that they learn at school. So play into that, if you do have a child that's interested. Michele, any advice for parents out there, whether they have kids that are interested in business or not? Any suggestions?
I think you called it out. Having your kids get comfortable with being uncomfortable a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like talking to other adults, or for us, we've got instructors here, and being willing to ask questions like, what would you like in a candy machine, right? Or what would you like in a vending machine? Sometimes it's really easy to get stuck in your phone or online. And I think having that face to face interaction, it
Mm-hmm.
teaches them such a valuable skill set. And I don't always want to be the one, teaching that, because I don't think it always comes from the parent, maybe as it doesn't land as well as maybe someone else, or someone that could be a little bit closer in their age. We've got quite a few people here that are in their 20s. And so I think that there's a little bit of admiration, but also there's a little bit more relatability.
Mm-hmm.
Putting them in those situations, though, that allows them to talk to people and ask curious questions. They might not get that opportunity with their peers in school.
Yep, I completely agree. Makes a world of a difference. So before we part ways today, I would love for you to give our listeners a book recommendation, or something that's made a positive impact on you, Michele. Any recommendations there at all?
I just finished Think and Grow Rich. I read that one
Yes.
again. Ask and It Is Given, and Strength to Strength. And all three of those I've really enjoyed. So all
Amazing.
kind of all manifesting or business related, but
Yep.
they've definitely changed my life. That, and if you do have aspiring entrepreneurs, another podcast I love besides yours, Mike, is Founders. That has been a fantastic podcast for me to tune into.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michele. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Any last parting advice for the listeners?
If you are inspired, take action.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. Please do leave us a rating and review, as it helps to continue to bring on guests like Michele. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Keeping It Real Estate.
Thanks, Mike.